Welcome back. In this video we're going to cover a photo shoot that was done at a workshop, and these gorgeous girls, we actually used the oil paint filter, which is only available in the older versions of CC. Don't worry, there's still lots of other stuff that we cover. But that, as you can see, this has got a little painterly effect to it. That's what we're after, and that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. This is photographed with a 200mm lens. I have placed them in this area so that we have the surrounding around them. It was actually an overcast day at this point. It was a bit muggy, and we've got a lot to deal with that light. But first of all, we need to make it autumny. And obviously how we're going to do that is add in some beautiful golden glow to the photograph. We're going to do that mostly in Lightroom, actually. Okay, so first of all, I do actually want to minus the exposure a little, just so I've got a little bit to work with in regards to the colour around them. There are a few little blowouts here. Well, they're not blowouts, but there's some highlights here, I should say. Okay, I want to raise the temperature of the yellow. Let's go that about up to 21 for the moment. And we might change the tint. Add a little bit of magenta in there just to match the skirt, and also to keep in with the purple of the dress, the magenta of the dress as well. Okay, actually I might even put that up just a little bit more. Okay, let's make that 26. Alright, now I'd like to bring in some highlights back. So if I raise the highlights, it actually brings attention to them at this point, which is great, but it also brings attention to the leaves on the side. So I'm going to lower that. And then I'm going to lower the whites as well. Let's see what happens when we lower the whites. Okay, so that makes it flatter. We'll just leave that on 62. And what I'd like to do is play with these blacks a little. See if I can bring back some detail with the blacks. Yep, let's put that on 43. And the vibrance, I want some nice beautiful colour to come through on those leaves and on her dress there. And let's just touch a little bit of saturation. Okay, now the tonal curve. I actually would like to make this image a little flatter. So I'm going to bring the tone curve down just on this area here. And what that does is it decontrasts it. However, I don't want it to darken it, so I'm just going to grab in the middle of this square here and raise it back up again. So now it hasn't darkened the photo. Now if we go down to the hue saturation, now this is an important bit for this kind of photograph. I do want to actually change the luminance of the orange. Now the orange is actually the skin tones in some of the leaves around. Bring up the luminance of this. Maybe not so much, yeah, just to about 24. And I might even desaturate at this point. Just a touch. Okay. If we go down to the split toning, I do want to add in some split toning. I'd like to make it a little bit more warm in the highlight. Let's see what we can, if we can just play around with this a little. Now I need to add in some saturation first, so I'm going to make it, actually let's make it about 12. Actually too much saturation, so I'll make that about 8. And the shadows, what I'm looking for is to make that a little bit warmer as well. Play with this. So I've made that yellow, and I'll just add the saturation. The saturation puts the colour in. So I've made this greeny yellow actually, so I'll put the green yellow back in. Now if you find in doing this that it's just made everything completely yellow, then I would take that bit off. That is very strong, that effect. Moving this along. If it's too yellow for you, just move it back a touch. Now what I need to do is add in some sharpening. I have been sharpening a little more than I used to. And I'm just going to add that to 36 and leave the radius and detail there. And I do want to add in a little bit of noise reduction as well. I do this by eye, by the way. Okay, now highlight tone priority. This is an important step for this. Let's go with minus 36. We might change the midpoint down. And as you can see, it's kind of self-explanatory. Okay, alright. So let's have a look at the before and after before we do any brush work. Okay, so all this is done is it's added it in a slightly golden glow. Alright, I'm going to do some brush work this side. So I'm going to add some temp I want this side to be as yellow as this side. And some tint. Okay. And I might just lower the exposure a little. Let's just brush this on and see how this goes. And I can see that's already helped it. Now, I just go by eye when I'm picking the colours. I mean, that seemed to work pretty well. If I look over here, there's some green and a little bit of magenta, but mostly it's yellow. And that's all I've done here. And then you can also change it once you brush it on. All right. I am going to do a new brush, so pressing new, double click effects to bring it back to normal, and just minus the saturation on their faces a little, and her arm there. Now that was too much, they were ghost-like just there, so I'll just bring that back a little. Okay. Alright, and on her knee as well. Okay, so now what I want to do is just add a little bit of light coming down from above. So I'm going to grab a big brush, and this is where the direction of the light's coming in. So I'll just draw the light coming down here. And a new brush, and I'm going to darken the areas around. Okay, okay. New, and I'm going to add in a little bit of warmth back up here. Okay, a little bit of warmth down there. Okay, new brush, and I'm just going to raise the exposure a little through here. Again, I find that if I work slowly and build up, that it's not quite as harsh. Now over here it doesn't have enough green, I can see that now, so I'm just going to add some tint in here, add some green in. Add some green down here too. That's kind of lost it down there. Okay. Okay, here we are in Photoshop, and what we're going to do is work on this file. So first things first, I want to flatten this out. So I'm going to add a solid color. Now I get a lot of emails asking, how do you pick the color when you add in a solid color? And honestly, I eyeball it. But I know that with this photo to begin with, I want to add in enhance that autumn feel to the photograph. Autumn is obviously reds and golds, so I'm going to go with a kind of a burnt auburn on this one. Okay, first of all, I'm going to reduce the opacity of that down. Now, as you can see, it's already flattened out the feel of that photograph. I just grab a black brush and I'm going to erase that off. Now, it's going to be fairly obvious to begin with. I've got 100% opacity on the brush, and I'm just going to brush that off, and it's a big fluffy brush at this point. I'm not doing too much detailed brush work at this point. I'm going to go in and just brush that off. Now, you can use your brackets tool keys to make the brushes bigger and smaller, but I'm just... Okay, so... Oh, made a little bit of a mistake there. Now, when you make a mistake, all you need to do is swap the color over, which is X on the keyboard, or you can do it manually. I'm starting to learn my shortcut. I find that it's so hard to remember them all. I've just worked out how to use the DVD player. I'm totally kidding. Now, as you can see, there's someone back here holding onto them. That's Laurie, and she is one of my fabulous assistants. Just making sure they're safe and sound there. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave the blending mode to normal on this one, and we'll build. And that's just softened that whole thing down a little, and it's made them more about them. Okay, so I'm going to do a new solid color, and this time I'm going to again do a little bit of a burnt auburn, but I want it to be brown, darker this time, and I will reduce the opacity of that again, and I'm going to grab a big brush on black and just remove them through the middle there. Okay, so this also helps with this downward light, because now I've just given it a little bit of a vignette by doing that. Now I can change the color of that now that I've done that. If I wanted it to be more green, but I don't. I really think that the brown is more helpful here. Okay, so I'll just reduce that down again to this one again, a little bit more down. I'm just trying to balance out the feel of what I'd like. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to now go in and add another solid color in there. And this time I'm going to go very red. And I'm going to change that to, not hard light, soft light. Okay, so I'll change that over to soft light. And all I'm trying to do is add in a little bit more warmth in there. And I'm going to erase that off on them. Okay. Okay, so that's made it a lot warmer, and I'm starting to be more happy with the feel of this now. The other way that you can do it, we can add in a little bit of photo filter. Okay. So I'm going to add in the density here, and some saturation in there as well. And this is literally how I do it too, picking the colour. And I'm showing you so that you understand that it's really, it is difficult, and I can make mistakes all the time. Now I do prefer that on the background, but not on them. So now what I'm going to do is just erase off on them, and I'll press X just so that I can put it back in. So I did that very messily. Arm's looking very red. In fact, I think that might be, yes it is, one of the other colours. And this is because I'm not zooming in. You have to be very careful. If I was to zoom in and do this properly, you would be here all day. So I'm just doing it quickly for you so that you can get the point. Okay, now I'm going to add in a hue saturation mask. Alright, and we're starting to really build on that colour. So that's plus 23. Well, maybe plus 27. We can even build on that. And what I'm going to do now is mask that off again. You have to be brave with your colour, I think. If you're going to bother with colour, is just be brave and just do it. Sometimes you can go back to the original and go, oh my gosh, that's just too much. But most people don't see the original, so they just don't know how far you've pushed it. And I do think a lot of it is just being brave. So I'll do a gradient. And I'll just bring this up to warm, and this up to warm. I think this one could be a little warmer. Okay, press OK. And to stick, I do think it looks more natural to have it coming in as a glow rather than the actual lines coming down. Okay, and we've done it in other videos, so you've already seen how to do the lines. There's so many different ways of doing everything. So I'm going to raise the curves on them just a touch. Okay. What I wouldn't mind doing is making this a little bit deeper around them and on their faces. So all I'm going to do is decontrast them a little, minus the brightness. I don't mind that so much. So I actually have lightened them up. However, I do want to go darker. So now I'm going to just do a curves and go a little darker on them. Okay. Now if we zoom in, what we want to be able to see is the detail of them. Okay. So now I'm going to add curves in, back in again. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with that. So let's make a group, layer, a new group from layers. Okay. Now if it's a little bit too much, you can reduce the opacity of it down a little. So I've made that about 81. And now I'm going to duplicate the background, grab those two layers, Control-Alt-E to merge them together. Okay, I'm going to just quickly add an oil paint just to blur out that background a little, and I'm going to do that by Filter, Oil Paint. And what I tend to do is have the Stylization 10, Cleanliness 10, Scale 10, Bristle Detail 10, and Angular Direction 0 and Shine 0, and I press OK. And as you can see, what it has done is it's made everything super blurry. So be careful with this. Now, I don't particularly mind it in the background, but you don't want to have that on the subjects. Now, I do tend to use this for the hair sometimes and on animals. Most of the time, that's when I use it. Okay, so all I'm going to do is erase it back a little. Grab a mask and a black brush, and I'll just make that a smaller layer. Actually, that's 100%. So I'd like to reduce that down a little. Okay, I don't mind it so much on their hair, even on the rope. is fine. And I would reduce the opacity of the whole thing down soon, but I don't particularly want it on their faces. It's too oil painting for me. Okay. So now that I've done that, I can now go and reduce the opacity of the whole effect down. Now when you do that, keep in mind that in print it can look a little funny, so it might not be what you expected. It also does darken it when you do it. Okay, so I'm going to actually grab this layer and just lighten it slightly. Okay, alright. So now I've done that, I am going to do a new layer and get in there with a brush. We'll work on colouring this through, just to bring out the detail in this. Now the shutter speed was fairly slow here, mostly because I wanted to have the swish of the skirt, but also it was a little dark as well. Now I'm just looking at that, I think I'm going to reduce the opacity of that down a little bit more too. Don't particularly like that look so much, but just to give you an idea of what to do with it. There we go. Alright, so we'll do some brush work. Okay, so I'm going to grab the colour. To pick a colour out, you just press Alt. So what I'm going to do is just zoom in and grab some colours and exaggerate it. Alt. Okay, hang on a minute. Brush. Alt to select the colour, and then I tend to darken it a little. So that's a darker colour. So now I'm going to go in there, make my brush smaller, and darken that crease a little. Okay, so Alt to pick a lighter colour, and I'm just going to go in and lighten that area. I'll make the brush a bit bigger. Now at the moment it's really obvious what I'm doing, and I'm not going to do this all day. Just to give you an idea, I'll turn it off and on, so you can work out the colour and add creases and contrast your photographs by painting back in, just the same way as we would do hair. Okay, so for example with hair, let's go in here, we grab the brush, make it the size that we want, and Alt for the color picker, pick the color. Okay, I would make that a little lighter, and then just go in with the reduced opacity and lighten up the details of the hair that I wanted lighter. Pick again, color picker, go lighter again, smaller brush, go through there. Okay, so in doing this, I'm simply enhancing the colors that are already there. Okay, again, color picker, lighten. So now what I'd like to do is do the same here. Could press Alt as well. But this will do. Lighten up her hair as well through here. Now you can also add in the contrast and darken hair as well, but we'll leave that up to you, but just to give you an idea. Okay, so let's turn this off and on. Now I don't like what I've done with this bit here, so I can simply take that off. Okay, but I don't mind it. Okay. Alright, well that gives you an idea anyway. But first of all, what we need to do is also remove Laurie from behind here. So I'm just going to clone that out. And honestly, the way I'm going to do that is I'll just grab all these layers, Control-Alt-E to merge them, Control-J to duplicate the layer. You can use content aware, but I tend to go the old-fashioned way. You know, I can't help myself. And I'm just going to clone. And easy does it. I'll just clone in and totally remove her out of there. Now I won't make you sit here and watch me do this. We'll just come back to a point and have it done. Okay, so here is it done. Alright, so now I'm going to duplicate that layer. What I wouldn't mind doing is just raising the curves on them a little and then brushing off with a normal brush. Okay. Okay, alright, and last but not least, this colour's fine. However, if you did want to go for something a little more autumny, and let's go for that, just a little bit more over the top, what I would do here is grab a selective colour, I'd keep it on yellow. So if it's not on yellow, pop it down, and I'd just drag the yellow across on the cyan to make it more autumny. Now let's do a before and after. So that's completely orangey. Now if it's too much on the skin, of course you just erase that back. There we go. Okay, let's have a look at the skirt. Alright. Okay. And I think I'll just paint that back on the hair there, so it's not quite so green. And I think that's it. Alright, so let's go and have a look at before. So this is before and after. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that video.